Live from Washington, D.C., this is Balance of Power with Joe Matthew and Kailey Leinz.
Iran is in talks with Oman over a permanent Hormuz toll system that President Trump says he doesn't want to see. Welcome to Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio. I'm Kailey Leinz alongside Tyler Kendall in Washington today. Joe Matthew is on assignment. And Tyler, we just heard President Trump speaking about Iran from the White House, suggesting that he wants the Strait of Hormuz to be open with no tolls. Of course, Iran suggesting they would like to continue charging tolls and control the Strait of Hormuz, essentially, which raises the question once again, and we ask it every single day, are these two sides getting any closer together?
Well, according to President Trump, we could be. He did say that the two sides are actively in negotiations, adding that the Iran conflict will end soon. We did hear from Iranian state media earlier today that seemed to frame the country's latest update is that the two countries are getting closer, but so far we haven't really seen indications that that deal is on the horizon.
Yeah, we're going to get the latest from the White House this hour as we check in with Bloomberg's Jeff Mason, who was in the Oval Office with President Trump a short time ago, asking him about the Strait of Hormuz issue. And we also have to talk about the reconciliation process underway on Capitol Hill right now. It's running into some issues in terms of trying to get all of the president's priorities through this partisan process. And we'll speak with the former chair of the House Financial Services Committee, Patrick McHenry, about that, too.
And lawmakers are under a little bit of pressure to get this through. It would include funding for immigration priorities. But keep in mind, we are up against a Memorial Day holiday, which means that Congress wants to get something done. It's something we're watching in Washington, as well as a check-in on what the markets are watching. So for that, we're going to head over to Charlie Pellet in World Headquarters in New York for the latest.
Hi, thank you very much, Tyler and Kailey. We are looking at a down day. Kailey asked the question, are we getting closer to a deal? And right now we have got oil higher, stocks lower, a standoff between the U.S. and Iran over key issues, lifting West Texas intermediate crude back above $100 a barrel. That is dragging down stocks and bonds. We begin with the equity market. S&P 500 index off 24 at 74.08, drop there of 0.3%. Dow Industrials down 85 on the Dow, a decline of 0.2%. Nasdaq down 107 for the Nasdaq Composite Index, a drop there of 0.4%. The Russell 2000 Index little changed on the day, turning higher, up under 0.1%. And the Bloomberg Mag 7 Index down now by 0.3%. Nvidia part of the index. Nvidia shares down after earnings by 1.4%. Your 10-year at 4.59% with a 2-year 4.09%. The 30-year remains above 5%, 5.11%. Gold down $24 the ounce to $45.19 for the precious metal, a decline right now of 0.5%. West Texas intermediate crude $100.10 a barrel, up 1.8%. Brent, the global benchmark, 106.50 barrel of Brent, up now by 1.4%. Two earnings reports, one closely watched for AI, the other closely watched for inflation. Nvidia shares lower after earnings. Indeed, the day's most actively traded stock, Nvidia, right now down by 1.4%. And Walmart shares after earnings down 7.3%. Walmart warning that fuel costs are squeezing the company's bottom line and could lead to higher prices for shoppers. Bears repeating, Walmart today hard hit, down by 7.3%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcast. I'm Charlie Pellet. Back we go to Washington. Balance of Power continues right now with Kailey Leinz and Tyler Kendall.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thanks so much. As Charlie mentioned, I'm Tyler Kendall here in Washington alongside Kailey Leinz. And earlier today, Iran's ambassador to France told Bloomberg News that the country is working on a formalized system with Oman to charge tolls through the Strait of Hormuz as Iran continues to grip on to its control when it comes to the waterway. President Trump moments ago in the Oval Office told reporters that he doesn't like that idea.
We want it open. We want it free. We don't want tolls. It's international. It's an international waterway. They're not charging tolls. Right now, they are losing $500 million a day is what it's projected. I don't know, it sounds like a lot of money, but whether it's 500 or 200 or 300, they're losing a lot of money. There hasn't been a ship that's been able to get through without our approval.
That was President Trump's response to a question asked by Bloomberg's very own Jeff Mason, who was in the Oval with the president and is now on the North Lawn of the White House, joining us here on Bloomberg TV and radio. So, Jeff, it seems that Iran is clearly on a different page than President Trump when it comes to this issue, but the president still maintains that this conflict is going to end soon. How is that going to happen if these two sides are still this far apart?
Well, that's a great question. He did say that he thinks it's going to end soon, but he obviously does not see the Strait of Hormuz in the same way that Iran sees it. And the big question will be whether or not that's a big enough sticking point to prevent them from receiving or getting to a peace deal, or whether that's something that the president is willing to table. And we don't know the answer to that. What we do know is Iran is using the Strait of Hormuz as a cudgel. And has learned over the last several weeks of this war that it has the upper hand with regard to the Strait of Hormuz. And so the question is, does the rest of the world accept that, and in particular, does President Trump accept that, or does it derail a peace deal that they're currently working on putting together?
If you're joining us on Bloomberg Television, you can see the honor guard behind Jeff Mason on the White House North Lawn as President Trump gets ready to participate in an ambassador credentialing ceremony. That's also why you're hearing those horns blare there. It's a very busy day at the White House, Jeff. I also want to ask you about another sticking point that we know has come up in the negotiations, including the stockpile of already highly enriched uranium. I know that you brought this up in the Oval Office. Where does President Trump stand on how critical that is for a deal? And what do we know about how the U.S. is eyeing either retrieving or retracting that enriched material?
Yeah, Tyler, it certainly is another one of those sticking points. And I did ask the president about that, whether or not Iran can hold on to that stockpile. And he said no, that they would that would have to be taken out of the country. But he did not give details as to how that would be done. And Iran, in the latest reporting, is the Iranian supreme leader is saying that is not to be taken out of the country. So that seems like another potential big hurdle to a peace deal. And the question is, again, how firm is President Trump on this issue, and how much is he willing to compromise on it with Tehran?
And Jeff, finally, obviously,
in the background, eh?
Yeah, the accompaniment of your report is really amazing.
Yeah.
We got some incredible horn and drum action going on, and you are doing a remarkable job working through that. We'll make you do that for just a minute longer, Jeff. I also want to ask you about Cuba. After the indictment of Raúl Castro yesterday, do you see the White House as setting the stage here for an action like we saw in Venezuela with Nicolas Maduro, or is this more a pressure campaign to avoid having to turn to kinetic activity?
Well, also a good question, and he was asked about Cuba in the Oval Office again today. The president saying that the placement of a battleship or of U.S. assets there was not meant to intimidate Cuba, and yet he clearly has Cuba on his mind, and so does Marco Rubio, and so does this whole administration. The president has not wanted to give details, excuse me, about what they're planning, and he didn't give any additional details today. He has said previously, when we've asked him about it, that he would get to that basically after Iran. But they clearly have something in mind. What exactly that is, if it's comparable to Venezuela or something else, is hard. But the way he described it today was he wanted to help the Cuban people. I'm not sure the Cuban government will see it that way.
All right, Jeff Mason, Bloomberg News White House correspondent, one of the nicest hits that we've heard in a while. Jeff, thanks so much. And to continue the conversation, we want to bring in now Patrick McHenry, former Republican Congressman from North Carolina, Bloomberg News contributor, as well as the former House Financial Services Committee chair. Mr. McHenry, thanks so much for being here. Nice to see you in studio. We have a lot that we want to get to, but I actually do want to start on foreign policy because we haven't seen the administration submit a supplemental funding request to Congress yet when it comes to Iran. We heard just yesterday from the House Appropriations Chair Tom Cole, who said that Pentagon is maybe months away for running out of funding when it comes to the conflict. Why do you think that we haven't seen that yet? Does this have to do with policy? Does this have to do with procedure? And when could we expect that to happen?
It's a prioritization on Capitol Hill. So what you heard from Tom Cole is roughly an August date that the Department of War would have some real challenges on funding the Iran war. For Chairman Cole to say this out loud in public is a significant thing, which means the private conversations have not resulted in a supplemental sent up to Capitol Hill. This is a couple of things happening at once. One, the first prioritization is to reopen the Department of Homeland Security and border security, and that is still work left undone. You have to have this reconciliation process, the budget process to go through, which is a complex months-long thing. That's not done, number one. Number two, here's some itchiness, I'm going to say itchiness, around policymakers on Capitol Hill about recent decisions the president's made. I'm sure we're going to talk about those things.
Oh, yes, sir.
And then three, you then have to have some sort of formulation of what the end game is, and are we near the end game at Iran? And this has been far more difficult than anticipated, at least at the outset of the war.
Well, just on the notion of some pushback we're seeing on Capitol Hill, we saw yesterday Senator Bill Cassidy, fresh off his primary loss, joining with 3 other Republicans and Democrats to advance a war powers resolution in the Senate. In the House, last time we saw this, it was tied. And I wonder if you think the next time a war powers resolution comes up to a vote in your old chamber that it might actually pass.
It's now up to sicknesses, absences. It is up to people having family issues on whether or not we have the president has the authorization to continue his strikes with Iran. This is not the way you run a great ship of state. And that's how close these votes are on Capitol Hill, both in the House and the Senate. And that's before the latest set of politics around primary elections and what that means. This is a very complicated beast. Before these latest votes on Iran, war powers generally, but specifically with Iran. Now, what you've heard from the administration in their testimony on Capitol Hill, both for the Secretary of War, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is that there's a pause, and therefore these timelines don't matter because we have paused our actions with Iran. This is really a question of how do you give Congress enough time to process, but also how do you have clarity on the sort of course of action with Iran. These two things are in direct conflict, especially with diminishing dollars in these accounts necessary to go carry out the war.
But a war powers resolution is largely symbolic, right? Because even if this passes both chambers, it'd end up on President Trump's desk. He would veto it. We probably wouldn't see 2/3 majority to overturn it. Should we be expecting conversations around other ways that Congress could exert its authority? Would that be tied to the future of an appropriations process related to the war? Or at this point, is it a lot about trying to send a message to the president so that the executive branch can take its own action?
Well, Congress is going to have to step in with a supplemental. They will have to. You cannot get around it. These accounts are not big enough for the execution. You cannot replenish sufficiently, and people will go to jail for moving money between accounts if they do it inappropriately. This is serious stuff. And so the Department of War is expert at how to utilize those accounts, and that's what you heard from Chairman Cole, is that the end date is really close. Congress has very few days between now and the August recess to actually deal with this. And the canary in the coal mine are these resolutions. And it says that you have to go give a message, not just to the American people, but to policymakers on Capitol Hill, that you have an actionable plan to bring things to a resolution. And in the backdrop of this are really tough politics for the White House and for my Republican Party.
Well, let's talk more about tough politics. It's pretty tough politics to ask vulnerable members to not only fund a ballroom at the White House, but also essentially to bless a $1.776 billion weaponization fund that could, without restrictions, potentially go to people like attacked police officers at the Capitol on January 6th. How difficult would those votes be to take for your former colleagues? And do you expect they ultimately will have to? What's the consequence?
Well, in the Senate, Leader Schumer has already said he's going to put the slush fund, the DOJ slush fund, as a part of this reconciliation process. It will be a part of the votes. It will be symbolic, yes, but that is a vote that hurts if you're on the November ballot. If I was a sitting member of Congress right now, I would absolutely hate this vote. It is a no-win situation. You're in the crosshairs with a Republican president who's super popular with a base, and you need to have the base turn out in a midterm election, and then the rest of the American people think this is absurd. And so you're really put in crosshairs. I'd rather be the Democrats on that vote. I would rather be the Democrats on that vote. As far as the ballroom, I think this is blown up into something that people largely don't care about. The president's raised private money to go build something that most presidents have said need to happen. You need to have a secure facility. We just had an event with the president in the most secure large ballroom in Capitol in the nation's capital, and so it says something needs to happen. Now, this has all been the notion was it's going to be privately funded. What we've then had is a lawsuit to say actually you can't do a full funding of this through private donations. We have laws on the books that say you cannot gift the government certain pieces of technology, certain pieces of facilities. And so they do need authorization from Congress to actually go carry out the rest of the build for the ballroom. So both these votes, one, I disregard the ballroom as like a salient political thing other than a talking point. But the slush fund at the DOJ, when I was a member of Congress and President Obama did this, a sue and settle with liberal and Democratic constituencies, we had a resolution on the House floor, which we passed with Republican votes and a handful of Democratic votes against a slush fund like this, sue and settle slush fund. This has been ramped up, and now you have a majority of the Senate speaking out against it and a majority of the House speaking out against it. This is really troublesome for the White House.
It is interesting to me that these two Republican-led policies are now causing these problems for Republicans on a day that I think it's fair to say this actually would have been a positive day for Republicans, right? Because they're getting through funding for immigration priorities without curbs from the Democrats that they had demanded. That's why we're in this reconciliation process, so that they can get this done with a simple majority. At a certain point, is this a messaging problem or a policy problem for Republicans, when you would have thought that the White House would have been touting that they're funding ICE and CBP?
Yes, but events overtake. And this is what happens when you're a governing majority. Events overtake your prioritization, your messaging capacity, and trivialities of the day can dominate the news rather than the substance of what you're trying to achieve. That's not new. It's just ramped up to 11 here in the Trump era because there's so much noise. Some coming directly out of the White House as a media strategy, but there's so much noise. Border security is still a winning issue for Republicans and President Trump. It has not been talked about as a great success of this administration. They should tout it more, and this should be a great sign of victory. Then you saw just this week as well, the president's priorities on housing came out of the House as well. Kailey,
I'm so glad you raised this.
Yes.
I did want to ask you about it because the House tweaked the Senate's version, sent it back. It seems the Senate wants to tweak it back, and I wonder how you think this ultimately gets resolved.
I think, as a traditionalist, as a former legislator, right, for 20 years, the craft of legislation is this art of caring about policy, fighting tooth and nails about things of substance that do impact people's lives, that can make a difference, and then largely the body politic says, why are you fighting about that? It's like too specific, right? The specifics here are that you have a passionate group in the Senate and a passionate group in the House, and they're trying to compare who can get the bigger bipartisan majority to move their policy. I think that is a win for like traditionalism and like this process working in Washington. I love it. And French Hill and Maxine Waters, who I spent I spent most of my waking hours with these two folks in my final years in Congress, to see them work out a deal and get a bigger bipartisan majority in the House than in the Senate on this policy issue of housing. It shows that they have stick and they've got the support of the president. Maxine Waters is on a bill that the president would like to sign. Man, oh man, I think it's an awesome thing.
I haven't seen Patrick McHenry this excited in a while. Mr. Chairman, Bloomberg Politics contributor, thank you for joining us here on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
It's 121 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Major turnaround for the U.S. equity market. We have got oil trading lower right now. WTI, Brent both declining. WTI back below $98 a barrel. Barrel of Brent just above 104. Bottom line here, oil is declining. Stocks are advancing. Right to the numbers with the S&P up 13 at 74.45. That is a gain of 0.2%. Dow Industrials up 168, up now by 0.3%. We've got NASDAQ higher by 54, up by about 0.2%. The NASDAQ 100 index up by 0.2%. And the Russell 2000 index extending its gain now to 0.7%. All of this is oil declines. Again, WTI now at 97.86 a barrel. It is down by about 0.4%. The 10-year currently yielding 4.56%, with the 2-year 4.05%, and the 30-year 5.10%. Gold now down $2 the ounce to $45.41 for the precious metal. A drop there of 0.1%, but again emphasizing WTI just about $98 a barrel, falling back below 100, down now by 0.1%. Shares of Ralph Lauren are surging. Right now, the stock is up by 13.8%. It reported revenue and profit that beat analysts' expectations. Also, we're keeping an eye on a deal in the real estate world, specifically apartments. Avalon Bay Communities and Equity Real Residential have agreed to merge in an all-stock transaction that combines two of the biggest apartment real estate investment trusts. However, shares of both companies are trading lower. Avalon down by 2.4%, and Equity down now by just about 2.5%. Again, recapping here: Dow, S&P, NASDAQ, major turnaround. S&P 500 index flat on the day right now after earlier losses. The Dow up 0.2%. NASDAQ bouncing around, down by 0.1%. Balance of power continues right now. And back we go to Washington. Once again, your hosts, Kailey, Leinz, and Tyler Kendall.
All right. Charlie Pellet tracking the markets for us. Thank you so much. A turnaround indeed. The numbers are starting to head in the more positive direction, at least for U.S. equities, and we'll continue to keep you apprised of that here on Bloomberg TV and radio. The numbers, though, are trending in a less positive direction when it comes to President Trump and his approval, and that was borne out once again in a poll released by Fox News yesterday evening, which showed the president at 61% disapproval of that, 48% strongly disapprove of his policies overall. And fascinating, Tyler, that this isn't only the economy, although he is underwater on that issue, with 77% saying that the economy is worse. But foreign policy as well. If you look at the figures in this poll, only 38% approve of the president's foreign policy, 62% disapprove of it. And of course, this is as the president is right now navigating a number of foreign policy challenges, trying to find an endgame on Iran, dealing with the aftermath of Venezuela, and trying to decide, I guess, how involved he wants to get in Cuba.
Right, as we see the administration take some updated steps yesterday with this indictment against Raúl Castro. We had the CIA director in Havana the other day. So things are definitely starting to mount. And the polling is interesting, too, because at this point, foreign policy and economic policy are dovetailing. And, of course, the economy is the issue that President Trump won on when it came to securing the White House last November. We'll see what happens when it comes to this November. For more, we want to talk about all of this with our political panel today. Rick Davis, partner at Stonecourt Capital and Bloomberg Politics contributor, and Kristen Hawn, partner at Rokk Solutions and a Democratic strategist. Rick, I want to start with you with some of the headlines that we're getting from President Trump earlier today. When it comes to the conflict in Iran, he says he's not too happy about some plans that Iran may be mulling with Oman when it comes to tolls in the Strait of Hormuz. There's this analysis cited by the Wall Street Journal that finds it's going to be Gulf partners that end up paying the bulk of those tolls. I'm curious your view on how this administration has been working with regional allies and how that may temper what ends up happening when it comes to the White House's response in ending this conflict.
Yeah, it's really been a mixed bag. You've seen periods of time where even Donald Trump said, hey, maybe we'll get in on the act and charge a toll. So he's been a little inconsistent on this since day one. And you're right. I mean, he's getting lobbied by the Saudis, by the UAE folks, the Qataris, those folks in Oman who have that Musandam that would be the pinch point on the Strait of Hormuz. And really, there has never really been a real articulation of administration policy as to how ultimately the strait gets reopened and how ultimately it remains an open international body of water and not overtaken by Iran's economic interests, not even to mention their security interests. So it's right now a bit of a ping pong ball bouncing back and forth all over the GCC. And where that ball stops right now, I'd say nobody knows.
Well, nobody knows, and it doesn't seem Congress is going to be in the know on this either. They have been left with a lot of questions to this point, Kristen. We hear that consistently on this program. As the president mulls his options here, as openly he's considering what he calls a, quote, big hit on Iran to try to get them to come to the negotiating table or to acquiesce in a more meaningful way. I wonder how you think it factors into the calculus, what response might come from Congress if he were to choose that action, because his argument to them was the clock is no longer running on war powers because the kinetic part of this conflict is actually over. If it restarts, do you think something materially changes with even Republican majorities on the Hill?
I mean, I think that there are a lot of considerations here. I think a lot of the members and the public, but the members are frustrated with the lack of clarity on the direction of the White House and the president. It's certainly a ping pong. He's been going back and forth, and I think that you'll see frustrations continue to grow, not just with the fact that members on both sides of the aisle believe that they have a role to play here, and the president and the White House using semantics in some ways to describe what this actually is to get around Congress. But you will see frustrations. There's also the political calculation. I think that a lot of these members, particularly in the House, the ones that have to run every 2 years, are facing re-election, and there's an electorate that is not happy with being involved in a conflict like this, particularly when the president said that he wouldn't get involved in this manner when he was running for office. So I think that there's a lot that these members are going to have to consider, and it could change how they are operating.
Rick, one of the headlines that crossed when President Trump was addressing reporters in the Oval Office earlier was that gasoline prices will drop once Iran ends. He's repeatedly said that this is going to be a short-term disruption. I'm wondering, from your expertise when it comes to political messaging, how the White House should be messaging around this deal when you hear the president say that he is trying to prioritize making sure that Iran doesn't get a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, this is the classic, Gretzky rule. You want to be where the puck is going, not where the puck is. And so as he's talking about trying to make people feel better about $5 gas, what he's really wants to focus on is, September, October, the first week of November, where gas price is going to be. And by everybody's estimation that I've seen, it's going to still be elevated, maybe not as high as it is today, but all that depends upon what happens in the Gulf. And so I think I would be starting to create an expectation, to consumers that, we're in for a bit of a ride, and that this is part of our patriotism, and that this is okay to sacrifice for, a greater good and opening of the strait and stopping, terrorists from having nuclear weapons. I mean, at some point, he's going to have to create, at least he should, some kind of buy-in with the American public on this war. He can't just say, hey, we're taking care of it, don't worry, none of this will affect you. And the mistake that previous presidents have made, and George Bush made this himself after 9/11, he said everybody needs to just go back and start shopping in malls. And what he probably should have been saying is, we all have to start making some sacrifices to keep our country safe. Donald Trump could take a page out of that book.
Well, on this notion of buy-in, Kristen, we're about 3 months into this thing now. Is the time for buy-in past?
I mean, I think that Rick's exactly right, setting expectations, but, what are those? And, I think in a lot of ways, the messaging war is well underway. You've had a number of different of the primaries, which the president has been actively involved in, motivating his base. And that's very different, though, than a general election. So I think in a lot of ways, a lot of money is going to be spent on both sides, but we're kind of down the line here. That said, 3 months is an eternity. in politics, and a lot of people will start paying attention. I just don't think that the American public is going to shift and move that quickly on something like a war overseas.
We have some breaking news crossing the terminal as we speak. The Senate will leave for recess without a budget vote, according to Republican senators addressing reporters on Capitol Hill. Rick, we had been waiting for this reconciliation package to come up for a vote, but it appears that it could have been derailed by some of the tricky provisions that might have been attached to it, including money for an anti-weaponization fund that President Trump has been seeking. I'm wondering what your reaction is to this news. Is this going to hurt Republicans' priorities when we know that so far it's been tied to trying to get this funding done when it comes to the immigration agenda?
Yeah, as we know, Donald Trump said, I want this package on my desk by June. And there's no chance that that's now going to happen with the Senate leaving. And look, some of it is the art of the legislative. I mean, the parliamentarian ruled that they could not include the Secret Service funds in this package. And so the staff's been trying to figure out how to work around that. This is very artful work by professional staffers who are, very good at trying to find workarounds. But, the clock ran out, and this Congress has not shown a willingness to stay in and work hard over weekends. And so it doesn't shock me a bit that they wouldn't want to take any hard calls, especially on issues that they know are unpopular. If this were something that the American public was going to applaud, they'd stick around and get it done. But in this case, the headlines isn't about immigration and stopping bad people. Yeah. It's about basements and payouts.
Well, as Rick alludes to the hard work here, Kristen, it's not going to get any easier with the passage of a few more days when they come back from the Memorial Day recess, is it? I mean, aren't they going to be faced with the same challenges, the same politically difficult votes around either the weaponization fund or the ballroom that Republican senators are still going to have to contend with?
Yeah, I mean, same difficult decisions, same issues. I'll just say that, in talking with my friends over in the Senate earlier today, jet fumes are strong. That's what they kept saying. These members wanted to get out of town. They had plans. And I think Rick's right. These are very difficult issues. And so it's not surprising at all that they would punt over the holiday weekend and try to deal with them when they come back. There's also work when members leave town. As a former staffer myself, a lot of work can get done on the staff level when members are not there to muck things up for you. So, that might be part of the calculus, too, that some of this work needs to be done at the staff level behind the scenes. So hopefully they will move the ball forward before they actually come back into town and vote.
All right, our political panel today, Rick Davis, partner at Stonecourt Capital and a Bloomberg Politics contributor, alongside Kristen Hawn, partner at Rokk Solutions and a Democratic strategist. Thank you both. Again, this breaking headline, Kailey, Leinz, Senate's leaving town without a vote on that reconciliation package.
Yeah, and we'll get real-time reaction from a Republican senator on Capitol Hill. Shelley Capito of West Virginia is going to join us next, so don't miss that conversation here on Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.
It's 1:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. I'm Charlie Pellet. Roughly 20 minutes ago, we told you about the turnaround in equities. We've got oil lower, stocks higher, hopes for a diplomatic way out of the war in Iran, spurring a bounce in stocks as oil trimmed its advance. Right now, West Texas Intermediate crude at $98.04 a barrel. WTI down now by 0.2%, have been trading above $100. Barrel of Brent right now at $104.29. Brent crude down by 0.7%. Bottom line, oil higher, oil lower, stocks higher. The S&P up 16 at 74.49. That is a gain of 0.2%. Dow Industrials back above 50,000, 50,220 now on the Dow, up 210 points. The Dow is up by 0.4%. Nasdaq up 0.2%. The Nasdaq 100 index up 0.3%, and the Bloomberg Mag 7 index up by 0.4%. As Nvidia slumps after earnings by 0.8%. The 10-year at 4.55%. The 2-year is at 4.05%, and the 30-year 5.09%. Spot gold, little changed on the day, up under $1 the ounce to $45.45. Crude bears repeating, 97.77 now on WTI, down by about 0.5%. Eli Lilly shares up 2.1%. This after a new study on its obesity shot. Nearly half of patients who got a high dose of Lilly's next generation obesity shot lost the equivalent weight of bariatric surgery. Further evidence that the treatment could be the company's most potent weight loss medicine yet. Again, Lilly shares up now by 2.1%. Balance of Power continues. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your hosts, Kailey Leinz and Tyler Kendall.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thanks so much. As Charlie mentioned, I'm Tyler Kendall here in Washington alongside Kailey Leinz, where we are tracking some breaking news that happened moments ago. Senators are now set to leave town without a planned vote on a $72 billion reconciliation package that would mostly fund some of President Trump's priorities related to immigration. But Kailey, it appears that that effort has been derailed by some other priorities that were tacked on.
Including, of course, questions around the weaponization fund of $1.776 billion for those who feel that they have had the justice system weaponized against them. It seems that that is one of the hurdles to this package that, remember, President Trump wanted on his desk, passed by not just the Senate, but the House, and there for him to sign by June 1st. Now we're heading into the Memorial Day recess, and it looks like that timeline may be slipping. So we want to get real-time reaction from Capitol Hill now, as I'm pleased to say, joining us once again on Bloomberg TV and radio is Republican Senator Shelley Capito of West Virginia, the chair of the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works. Senator, welcome back to Bloomberg. A very simple question for you to start. What happened here?
Well, I think the $72 billion in reconciliation that covers the law enforcement, the border security, ICE, the original mission of this bill is something that's exceedingly significant. And it's too bad we're going to have to leave home here and go back home before those issues. You know, the Democrats just did not want to fund our law enforcement agents. And so, but on top of that, the president put some more priorities on there, the weaponization fund and other things, and it just became much more complicated. A lot of questions about what is this fund, who decides, who's eligible, how did it come about, why are we hearing about this now? A lot of uncertainty within the Republican caucus, which I shared. And so I think the leader decided the better thing is to get these questions answered and come back and deal with this when we come back in June.
It's our understanding that the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche was on Capitol Hill meeting with many Republicans earlier today. Senator, can you confirm, were you part of those conversations, and were any sort of potential compromises talked about that we could hear about once everybody gets back into town, like conditions on who would qualify for this anti-weaponization fund?
Well, yes, the acting Attorney General was at a meeting beginning at 11 o'clock. I was there. I also had a simultaneous hearing at the same time, but I was definitely in the room, and I can attest to the fact that there were a lot of deep questions and unanswered questions. The acting Attorney General did his best to answer those questions, but I still think there was some lingering doubt, and I think you see that reflected in the decision to stop the process, get the questions answered, and move on at a little bit later time.
Well, what kind of answers are you looking for, Senator? What kind of restrictions around the use of this weaponization fund would you support?
Well, I think the thing is, we were just made aware of this probably at the beginning of the week, as we're, now on Thursday. Is there a weaponization availability now under DOJ? That's one of the questions. Has a fund like this ever been constituted? That's another question. Who would be eligible? What kind of parameters? Who makes the judgments? These are the kinds of questions in more specificity that we just didn't see at the beginning, and we haven't really had enough time to digest. So I think a lot of it is uncertainty as to what this is and how and who it impacts. And I think that in the end, as prudent lawmakers, we needed to know those answers to those questions.
So should we expect significant curbs to be put on this anti-weaponization fund? Should we expect it to not be attached to any legislation going forward? What happens here next? Where did lawmakers leave it? Considering, as Kailey mentioned, we know President Trump wanted an entire bill on his desk by next month.
Well, I mean, the way I would look at it is the most important thing that the president wants is he wants his law enforcement entities under Homeland Security funded through the rest of his term. We know the Democrats will absolutely not fund our Border Patrol agents, which, by the way, now the border is pretty much sealed off. They will not fund ICE. And these are critical entities in terms of preserving and keeping security here domestically. I think that's the core of what we need to address first, and that's what the president wanted on his desk. And we could have probably gotten it there had we not had some extra things added that we just had questions about. So I don't know where this goes. I don't know that anybody really knows. I don't know that it can be tightened enough to satisfy enough people. I'm sort of in the category of I need to learn more here before I can make that decision. Also, there were questions about the extra money for the Ballroom edition. What is that going to be spent for? What really the core Secret Service mission is. The parliamentarian you saw knocked a lot of that out, which created some questions as well. That was just at the beginning of the week. And so I think if you add all of these things together, we're going to lose that core mission, which is funding Homeland Security, which is what we really need to do. And maybe we come back with just that, or maybe we come back with a much more narrow focus on some of the other things.
Senator, we do want to talk to you about other issues as well, but would you be able to confirm that the Justice Department told Republican senators that you too could be eligible for these payouts? What was the messaging around that?
You know, I didn't hear that in the meeting
Okay.
when I was there. As I explained, I wasn't there the entire time.
I did want to quickly mention the parliamentarian, since you brought up the Senate parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDonough, who has taken out some parts of the priorities when it comes to what actually would fit into a reconciliation package. President Trump has called for firing the parliamentarian. Is that something that you think that this Senate would get on board with?
No, I don't. I don't think that the Senate has a will to or a desire to fire the parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough. She's a professional who's served under both Republican and Democrat leadership. And this always happens in reconciliation, that certain things don't make it all the way through because of jurisdictional issues, because of financial issues. It could be a whole myriad of reasons. And that's why we have a parliamentarian to be able to objectively look at these things. So it's not unusual for things to come out. Normally, you would reshape them and reform them, and then we were in the process of doing that on some of the things that the Ballroom issue and things like that. So no, I don't believe anybody wants to fire the parliamentarian. I don't think that would be. I don't think that would be the direction that we would want to go.
Well, Senator, clearly the president hasn't been too happy with the parliamentarians' rulings. He also hasn't been adequately happy, it seems, with two of your colleagues, Senator Bill Cassidy, fresh off of losing his primary to a Trump-backed challenger, or not making the runoff that includes a Trump-backed challenger, failing to endorse your colleague John Cornyn in his re-election race and runoff in Texas. Has he made it harder on himself to even get enough votes for a partisan process like reconciliation?
You know, I think time will tell whether those members that the president has not endorsed and actually worked against in Bill Cassidy's case. I think, you know, it remains to be seen what kind of posture they're going to take. They're both extremely good friends of mine and great gentlemen and have served our country very well. And I think Senator Cornyn's going to win next week, so I think we'll have him back.
I wanted to follow up on one thing that you mentioned related to the Ballroom. Clearly posed an issue when it comes to this reconciliation package. Can you give us any insight into whether or not there were agreements that number would be shrunk from that $1 billion figure? How should we be watching that particular issue? Because we heard President Trump in the Oval Office earlier today really saying how this is critical when it comes to security, since a lot of that funding would go towards Secret Service and securing the Ballroom rather than construction of the Ballroom.
Well, I think, you know, do I think it will shrink? I think in all likelihood, yes. I think that was the direction that we see it headed, and that's also the direction that would probably help us in terms of getting this through the parliamentarians' rulings and judgments. I think we need to look at this is Homeland Security, it is Secret Service, so what do they need? More technology, more training, more fortifications for that facility, safety, maybe they're building skiffs and other things. So, I mean, I think the number would be quite robust in any event, but I'm not sure that it would be as expansive and large as what the president has asked for, but that's, again, is not unusual. Many times the president and presidents all throughout the history have asked for certain things that the Congress then uses our will to make those decisions.
Yep, it all comes down to the appropriations process ultimately. Right. And you, of course, Senator, sit on the Appropriations Committee. The equivalent committee in the House, obviously led by Congressman Tom Cole. We got some interesting comments from Chairman Cole about the funding still available to the Pentagon to continue on with our operations in the Middle East. He suggested that could run out in a matter of months. And I wonder how quickly you need to have a supplemental funding request in hand to avoid the scenario of the Pentagon running out of funds to continue this, assuming that a deal is not reached in time.
Right. We do need a supplemental request from the White House. They've signaled that they are going to be putting that forward to the Congress. I think what I'm reading is that the Secretary or the Army and Navy are looking at curtailing certain training missions. I mean, we're in a precarious time here right now where we're utilizing a lot of our forces in a lot of different ways. So training is exceedingly important, along with technologies and ballistics and missiles and all these things that we are using daily. This is an important request that we want the president to come forward with on the supplemental, and then we can then look at the appropriations process to see how big a number. I personally think we need to fortify our Department of War, and we need to fortify our troops, and that would mean bumping that number significantly, but having a supplemental in front of it would help us determine what that figure would be.
The war in Iran, of course, bumping up consumer retail gas prices. The average in West Virginia today, $4.50. I'm wondering if you could give us any update on where President Trump's push for a suspension, or a temporary suspension, rather, of the federal gas tax stands, and if there's anything else that Congress could do that could help Americans when it comes to facing these higher fuel costs.
Well, this is a real issue. I'm from rural America, rural West Virginia. We travel far to go to the grocery store, to go to school, to go to church, to visit your relatives. We're in our cars a lot, and because of those hills, we're expending a lot of gasoline. And so this hits many people, the ones who can least afford it, the most. And so I hear a lot of complaints. I hear a lot of calls into the office, really feeling the strain of high gas. What can we do? Well, first of all, I think the president is working to do this, and that's to bring this conflict to an end, open up the Straits of Hormuz, and then let global oil be flowing. I think that's number one. It has to be the right decision. It has to be the right agreement for the president. I understand that and fully agree with him, but I think expeditiously that's the best thing we can do. I think we can also work on holding the price down of other things like housing, mortgage rates are still way too high. The cost of food, which also is reliant on gas because you use diesel and fertilizer and everything else to grow food. So this is an issue that I think really hits at election time, but it hits everybody right now. We're going into the summer travel season.
All right, Senator Shelley Moore Capito, Republican from West Virginia and chair of the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works. Thanks so much for joining us here on Bloomberg Television and Radio on the heels of this breaking news that the Senate is set to leave town without a vote on that reconciliation package. Kailey, it comes after we saw the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche on Capitol Hill trying to sell lawmakers on this package. Yeah, it seems he had some difficulty selling senators, including, it seems, Senator Capito, who says some of her questions still remain unanswered. So we will continue to follow this story and follow the turnaround in the markets as well, where it's session highs on stocks, oil prices, session lows. We'll have more on the late edition of Balance of Power here on Bloomberg.